Ash Post began as a brown smudge on the eastern haze, the kind of mark a tired eye invents when it wants destination more than truth. By mid-morning, the smudge grew teeth, a wall line, a tower stump, a pale scar of road that funneled traffic toward a gate blackened by old soot. The name was not poetry. Ash Post sat downwind of a charcoal ridge where Empire burned scrub into fuel for forges and signal braziers. The air tasted like a cold hearth even under hard noon. I ran toward it because seals do not deliver themselves, and because grey riders made every open slope a ledger of risk. Rostam's copper rode against my ribs. The lighter packet he had slipped me still held stamps that would look honest if no one matched routes too carefully. Double pay unearned from Vahram's almost mercy meant nothing if a collar clicked. Earned minutes meant everything. I spent the last of them on goat braids and matte ground until the braids ended and the road demanded a face. Behind my heart, the ember sat banked from a 2-heartbeat sip at a leaning stone an hour back. Not full, never full. Second law rode my ribs like a quiet passenger that still tried every clear minute to become a drunk. The hungry clear sky offered the whole white table. I left most of it steaming. Portion is a practice. Practice is how you arrive as a runner instead of a beacon. A salt cart creaked ahead of me, oxen foaming, driver half asleep until the Ash Post walls resolved, and he sat up as if walls themselves were a tax official. He glanced at my strap, at my mouth, at the way I did not pant as hard as the heat deserved. Lean, he said. Fort likes lean men for the tower runs. Fort also likes lean men for questions. I told him I liked stamps and sleep. He snorted and offered a ride for a copper. I kept my feet. Height on a cart puts your face nearer sun and nearer eyes. Metal hardware sings to the hollow. I do not enjoy explaining that song, even to myself. Dust rose behind us in a thin rope that might have been only wind or might have been pursuit delayed by scrub. I did not look long. Looking back is a posture hunters learn to read. I watched the gate instead, timber dark with old fire stain, iron bosses dull, 2 guards in mismatched kits arguing over a melon. Mismatched kits meant mixed authority. Mixed authority meant more mouths and fewer clean orders. Good for slipping, bad for trusting any single story about who owned the yard. I stopped outside bowshot and built my face. Tired, slightly stupid, lips scrubbed to ordinary crack with grit and oil until red looked like work. Nail wrap hidden under an extra leather sleeve, Rostam had cursed into my hands without ceremony. The sketch of my strap lived somewhere in grey bags. Sketches are not the same as proof, but proof starts as recognition. Recognition starts as a guard who likes to feel clever. The hollow rolled once at the smell of ash and hot brick. Charcoal ridge smoke rode the wind in thin grey sheets. To the second stomach it was a cousin of skyfire, weak and dirty, like watered wine after lightning. I did not sip it. Dirty heat teaches dirty habits. I wanted noon clean and counted, not smoke that clung to clothes and made temple noses twitch. A runner came out the gate going west, eyes too wide, shoulders tight. He saw me and almost spoke, then swallowed it. "If you are lean and burned at the mouth, turn around," he muttered as he passed. Captain Kurush collects interesting tools. Interesting tools do not leave. I asked if seals still left. He laughed without humor. Seals leave, men get inventoried. Then he was past me and into the road's shimmer like a man trying to become distance before distance refused him. Captain Kurush. Name like a hook. I filed it beside Vahram's T-eyes and Rostam's unfriendly mercy. Captains are weather systems with stamps. Some pass over, some route. Ash Post smelled like a routing place. I adjusted the satchel, checked that Rostam's meat wrap had not leaked grease onto the packet, and walked the last stretch as if ordinary life still owned me. It did not. But Ash Post did not need to know that in the first 10 breaths. First 10 breaths decide whether you are a late post or a specimen. I intended to be late, dull, and gone before the charcoal ridge's shadow turned. The melon argument ended. One guard pointed his spear butt at my chest in the casual way of men who have pointed at too many chests. Name, route, seals. I gave Ardash, Eastern Loop scrap, packet forward. He pinched my jaw with fingers that smelled of melon rind and old iron. Mouth looks cooked. Wind and salt margin, I said. He waited for more. I gave him nothing. Silence is a wall if you build it without pride. He waved me through as if disappointed I had not confessed to being a song. Inside, ash post opened into a yard striped with ash drifts against the windward wall, a smithy coughing black breath, a cistern with a skin of dust, and a timber office raised on stones, as if even buildings here wanted to stay above the soot. Men moved with the short steps of people who live under someone else's curiosity. I smelled onion stew, hot slag, horse, and a thin sweet oil that did not belong to kitchens. Temple oil. Priest smell without the priest yet visible. The hollow kicked. I swallowed the kick and kept my eyes on the packed earth path toward the office like a good dog that still had teeth folded away. Ash post had me inside its walls. The brown smudge had become a mouth. I walked in carrying seals, laws, and a second stomach that wanted to taste the white nail of noon above the tower and write my name in heat on every dull iron boss until the gate learned manners. I gave it 2 heartbeats of nothing and a hard internal stop. Arrivals are when stupid men perform. I had not come to perform. I had come to stamp, eat, learn the shape of Captain Karush's hunger, and leave still named Ardash on the only ledger that mattered, my own. The clerk at the raised office did not look up when I set the packet on his scarred table. Ink lived permanently in the seams of his fingers. A fly walked the rim of his water bowl, and he ignored it with the dedication of a man who had decided which wars he would fight. Seal check first, face never, was the religion of small posts until captains changed the creed. He checked. One edge of Rostam's lighter packet had a wax join that was not my original work. His thumbnail paused. Weather, I said. Road dust. He grunted and stamped clay harder than the clay deserved, as if clay had insulted his mother. Return scrap, he said, and shoved a tablet wrapped in oiled cloth toward me. Local runs only until further notice. Outfort loops suspended. Captain's order. Suspended loops are collars made of schedule. I kept my face bored. Plague, bandits, temple audit. Which flavor of further notice, I asked, because asking nothing can look like guilt, and asking too much looks like fear. Captain Karush will tell you if he wants you told, the clerk said, and for the first time he looked at my mouth. Then he looked away fast, as if the looking itself might be recorded. I took the local scrap and stepped back into yard light. Ash drifts ghosted across my sandals. The smithy rang a rhythm that sounded like complaint. On the wall walk, a man in a cleaner tunic than soldiers wear stood with his hands behind his back, watching the charcoal ridge as if it might confess. Not full temple white, not garrison blue, the grey compromise again, thinner here, one man instead of a pair, which meant either confidence or a scout for thicker company. I went to the cistern, paid a copper for a full skin, and drank ordinary water until my ordinary stomach sloshed. The second stomach ignored it. Different thirsts, different laws. A boy sweeping ash into neat, useless piles stared at my strap sleeve. I stared at his broom until he found the ground more interesting. Local runs only. That meant ash post intended to keep feet inside a radius it could grab. Varam had bought me minutes with paper mercy. Karush looked ready to buy men with walls. I found the runner's shed by smell, sweat, old leather, a lamp that smoked. 3 pallets, one occupied by a snoring woman with a bandage on her calf, one empty with a name scratched into the wall above it that I did not know. I took the third, sat with my back to timber, and ate a strip of Rostam's meat slow enough to taste salt and smoke, and the particular flavor of help that refuses to call itself friendship. The hollow wanted noon. Noon stood white and brutal above the open yard. I did not go sip in view of the grey tunic on the wall. I waited for a reason to be outside that looked like duty. Reason arrived as a shout. Captain wants the new stamp, now. I rose, left the satchel under the pallet edge with the copper still against my ribs, and kept only the sealed local scrap and my knife. Walking unencumbered into a captain's room is either trust or a way to show you have nothing worth stealing but your skin. I preferred them to think my skin was ordinary. The office above the clerk smelled of charcoal soap and hot wax. Captain Karush stood rather than sat, a tall man with a shaved scalp shining under the roof hatch, shoulders like a man who had lifted shields before he lifted ledgers. His eyes were not tea, they were chipstone grey, the colour of the rider's compromise cloth. He smiled with the lower half of his face only. Ardash, he said, Storm Runner, Switchback Story, Dry River Needle, Varram's almost lost dog. You collect names the way Ash collects in corners. I am a runner, I said. Stories collect themselves. He laughed once, short. Stories are inventory if you sort them. Sit. I sat on a stool that wobbled. Wobbly stools are tools. They keep guests slightly busy with balance so their mouths work harder. I planted both feet and made the stool behave. Karush poured watered wine into 2 cups and did not drink his. You will run local for me. Short hops, Coal Ridge, Lower Village, Signal Tower. You will be fast. You will be quiet. You will tell me if grey men ask you questions before they ask me. Yes, Captain. He watched my mouth when I said it. And if I ask you to show me a trick the road taught you, you will not waste my afternoon with wind and salt margin lies. The hollow rolled so hard I almost coughed light. I swallowed metal taste and met his eyes. I know road tricks, I said. Blisters, shortcuts, which guards sleep. If you want theatre, hire a singer. His smile widened a fraction. Singers do not melt spear tips. He let that sit between us like a third cup. Then he waved me out before I could invent a denial that would become a confession by shape alone. Outside, the yard noise rushed back. My hands wanted to shake. I did not allow it. Ash Post's gate had not merely let me in. It had closed a schedule around my ankles and given the schedule a captain's name. I walked to the shed like a man thinking about sleep and thought instead about exits, water, metal hazards, sight lines from the tower, and how much noon I could store without copper, while a grey tunic watched the ridge and a captain watched me. I stood a while in shed shade after the first interview and let the fort's noise sort itself into layers. Smith, cook, guard laugh, distant ridge wind. Under it all, the soft grind of ash moving when men walked through drifts. Ash Post never let you forget its name. The name was a hand on the back of the neck. I cleaned my knife, though it was already clean. Hands need jobs when the hollow wants audiences. Then I slept a thin hour and woke to the clerk shouting local hop as if the words tasted of power. I took the scrap, took the gate, took the road, and practiced looking like insurance until the look almost fit. I memorized the clerk's ink fingers and the fly on his bowl because small details keep panic from inventing larger false ones. When panic invents, it writes songs. Songs reach provincial ears. I wanted only the scrape of my own sandals and the dull knowledge of where the bar stuck on the fodder gate when damp rose at night. By evening, I had learned Ash Post the way I learn roads. Exits first, vanities second, hungers third. Exits. Main gate under 2 guards who liked melon and argument. Fodder gate near the stable with a bar that stuck in damp. Wall stair on the west that a thin man might use if he did not mind broken ankles on the outer scrub slope. Vanities. The raised office, the polished boss on Karush's door that threw noon like a coin. The grey tunic's clean hem in a dirty fort. Hungers. Coal quota, signal oil, and whatever Karush meant by tools that did not leave. I ran the first local hop before dusk because refusing first orders is how you become interesting for the wrong reasons. Lower Village. Plague notice copy. Return with a tally of who still breathed market day air. Simple, the kind of run that makes a captain look like he cares about people when he mostly cares about whether market taxes still have bodies to take them from. Outside the walls, the plateau opened and my lungs remembered honesty. I sipped 2 heartbeats behind a thorn screen, stopped, felt even weight settle, and ran with the packet light and the hollow pleased enough to stop complaining. Portion control under a collector's eye is different from portion control on empty road. On empty road, overfill cooks you. Under a collector's eye, even a safe store can become a reason to open your chest with questions. The lower village smelled of sick rooms and boiled garlic. I delivered with tongs left on a stone for messengers, took a scratched tally stick from a woman who would not come within 3 paces, and left without drinking their water. Distance is sense during sickness. I stole that sense for temple season and for captain season both. Back at Ash Post after dark, the grey tunic was gone from the wall. In his place, a brazier burned dirty orange, throwing shadows that made every ash drift look like a crouching man. I stamped the tally, ate lentil mash that had met salt only as a rumour, and listened. Soldiers talked. Karush had taken a smith last year who could weld without flux in ways that made temple men frown. The smith now worked under watch and drank less. Karush had taken a tracker who read dust like scripture. The tracker had tried the fodder gate at night and now limped with a story about stairs. Tools, the men said, and laughed the laugh of people who hope they are hammers, not nails. I did not laugh. I lay on straw and practiced being a dull nail that still knew it was metal. Near middle night, the snoring woman with the bandaged calf woke and whispered across the dark, "You are the switchback one." I said I was the lentil one. She snorted. "He will test you in the yard when he has an audience. Refuse hard and you are defiant. Perform full and you are property. Find the third road." "What third road?" I asked. "Be useful in a way that is not the way he wants," she said. Then she slept again as if she had not just handed me a law that belonged beside my own. Be useful, not spectacular. Tool, not pet. Pet is fed and collared. Tool is used and, if clever, misplaced between jobs. Dawn horn. Local hop to the signal tower on the charcoal ridge. Climb that hurts calves. Air thicker with soot. The signal crew were half deaf from brass and half blind from glare. They took my scrap, gave me another, and did not care about my mouth. I liked them for that. On the ridge top, the noon sun was a white nail driven through smoke. I wanted to drink until the world went copper and the tower brass became food. I took 2 heartbeats in the lee of a rock and stopped so hard my jaw ached. The stop is the law that keeps all other laws possible. From the ridge I could see Ash Post small and brown, and far west a dust knot that might have been caravan or comb. Grey-silver on the wing still. Hunt not ended, only relocated to a yard with a collector's smile. Descending, I met a boy driving goats who asked if the fort paid for burn stories. I told him goat songs paid better and that forts pay in questions. He looked disappointed. Disappointment is safer than belief. I left him with his goats and my silence. At the gate, the melon guard pinched my jaw again. Less melon now, more suspicion. "Captain said to send you straight up," he muttered. I went straight up with soot on my tongue and laws ticking in step rhythm. Karush had company. The grey tunic sat on a cushion like a man who believed cushions were arguments. His beard was oiled. His eyes were charcoal chips. Not the same courier from the high road weeks ago, but the same school of nose. He sniffed when I entered as animals sniff smoke. "This is the one," Karush said. "Road says he eats storms. Temple says unclean hunger has a scent. I say I want a tool that arrives on time and frightens bandits into paying tax instead of taking it." I stood with my hands visible and empty. "I am a runner," I said. "I arrive, I stamp, I leave. The grey man smiled without warmth. Leaving is a privilege of the uninteresting. Karush's lower face smile returned. We will see how interesting you are at tomorrow's noon demonstration. Small, controlled, in the yard, refuse, and I assume Vahram's mercy was a mistake I will correct with rope. Perform, and perhaps Ash Post becomes the only collar soft enough to breathe in. He dismissed me before my mouth could dig a grave. Outside, ash drifted against my ankles like a tide that had forgotten the sea. Tomorrow noon, audience, third road required. The woman in the shed had named the shape. Now I had one night to cut it into something my hands could hold without burning the fort. The grey nose and the last of my name that still meant late post instead of inventory. After dismissal, I walked the ash drifts until my sandals went grey to the straps. Soldiers watched without watching. That is the gaze of places where men become shelves. I bought a cup of weak beer I did not want and listened to two mule drivers complain about coal quotas. Quotas invent captains like Karush. Quotas also invent runners who light pans and call it survival. I poured half the beer out when no one looked, because a clear head was worth more than belonging at a bench, and went to the shed to oil strap leather until the horn made the fort flinch toward evening. That night, Ash Post inventoried me without opening my ribs, which was almost worse because it meant they were patient. A quartermaster arrived at the shed with a tally stick and a smile stolen from better men. Height, weight by guess, strap marks, scar on forearm, black at mouth corners or not. He wrote as if clay could hold a soul. I answered short. When he asked about storms, I told him weather. When he asked about bandits, I told him roads have teeth. When he asked if I prayed, I told him I ran. He liked none of it and liked the writing more. After he left, the bandaged woman, who said her name was Neda when the lamp was low, rolled onto an elbow. He inventories for Karush's private shelf, not the Empire's. Empire shelves you can sometimes bribe. Private shelves, remember. I asked why she still ran local with a bad calf. Debt, she said, not coin. A brother who worked the charcoal ridge and coughed blood until Karush paid a healer. Healers here invoice the fort. Fort invoices your feet. She shrugged as if shrugs could balance ledgers. Third road, she repeated. Tomorrow. Do not be a song. I slept in pieces. In one dream, the grey nose opened my chest like a satchel and held the hollow up to Karush while clerks took notes in ash. I woke biting down on a release that almost became real light between pallets. I swallowed it. Sweat-soaked, silent, Neda muttered and turned, never knowing how close she came to a new religion or a new corpse. I cleaned my knife instead of sleeping again. Before dawn, I walked the yard in the grey that is not night and not day. Fodder gate bar, west stair, cistern rope, smithy tongs left out like invitations, polished door boss on Karush's office. I spat in dust near the boss and watched it dry without steam. Control held. For now, that was the whole victory. I also mapped people. Melon guard at main gate, lazy until praised. Stable hand who liked cats more than captains. Clerk who feared Karush more than gods. Signal tower crew who lived half on the ridge and half in deafness. Grey nose whose name I still did not have, which meant he preferred being a function. Functions are harder to shame than names. Karush found me near the cistern, as if he had been waiting inside my route. You walk like a man counting exits, he said. I walk like a man with a bad stomach and a long day, I said. He looked pleased that I had offered a body complaint instead of a defiance. Complaints are ordinary. Ordinary is the costume I needed. Noon, he said. Yard, small coal pan. You will light it without oil if the road stories are true. If they are not, you will still be useful carrying coal until your back learns loyalty. He left. The hollow kicked at the word light. Lighting a coal pan was smaller than melting spears and larger than anything I could later call wind. It sat exactly on the line between useful and spectacular. I took a local dawn hop to the lower village with a water tally because movement clears thought. On the road, I drilled the third path out loud under breath. Show coal, not spear. Show start, not stream. Show a craft that looks like a trick a desperate runner learned once, not a second stomach that drinks days. If they push for more, fail softly. Soft failure is a skill. Hard failure is ash. At a roadside shrine, someone had left iron nails as wards. I did not touch them. Metal is a door. Fifth law. I kicked dirt over the brightest nail until it stopped glittering like food and walked on. Back through the gate by mid-morning, jaw pinched again, packet stamped, I found the yard already rearranging for theatre. Men set a low clay pan on packed earth. A brazier stood nearby with honest flame for comparison. A bench for Karush, a stool for the grey nose. Soldiers drifted into a loose ring with the hungry eyes of people who have been promised a story with their stew. Neda passed me carrying water and did not look at my face. Useful, not spectacular, her shoulder said. I sat in shed shade and sipped nothing, storing only what last night's banked coal still held, which was little. Better to take a clean 2-heartbeat sip just before the test under some excuse of stretching in sun than to walk in half empty and be forced to drink greedily in front of them. Greedy drinking is a confession of need. Need is a handle. The horn for third watch before noon cracked the air. Karush appeared clean-shaven, scalp shining, grey nose oiled, clerk with tally, melon guard trying to stand like a man who understood history. Ardash, Karush called, "Come show Ashpost whether the road lies." I stood, dusted my knees, walked into the ring with my hands open and my laws loud enough inside my skull to drown the hollow's cheer. Third road, coal not spear, start not stream, soft failure ready in the pocket like a second knife. The white nail of noon stood directly above the pan. The whole fort smelled of ash and onion and attention. Attention is a weather system. I stepped into it carrying a runner's face and a weapon's secret, and for the first time since the wash where lightning had rewritten me, I understood that surviving power is only half the craft. Surviving other people's plans for your power is the rest. When the ring began to form, I counted exits one more time without turning my head. Main gate, fodder gate, west stair, tower shadow, cistern, shed. Counting is not cowardice. Counting is how you keep a third road open while a captain builds a stage on the first two. Neda passed with water again and the cup rim clicked my knuckle on purpose. Still alive, the click said. Still not singing. I clicked back once with a fingernail and then became boring enough to disappoint anyone looking for omens in my hands. I checked the hollow the way a quartermaster checks a jar. Low, medium. Enough for one needle, maybe two if I stayed cruel with the stop. Cruelty toward appetite is kindness toward later. I rolled my shoulders, cracked my neck, and stepped toward the forming ring with dust on my knees already, so I would not look freshly posed. Posed men are performers. Performers get collars measured while they bow. The clay pan weighted like a mouth. Coal chunks dull as old teeth. No oil sheen, no cedar shavings, just carbon and expectation. Karush gestured, small, controlled. Impress me without inventing a religion in my yard. The grey nose folded his hams. Clean fire is tended outside the body, he said, almost kindly, as if kindly were a polish on a knife. What sits in the gut like a thief will show its theft when asked to play hearth. Soldiers tightened the ring without meaning to. Bodies leaned towards spectacle. I felt the hollow rise like boiled milk. I forced it down to working height. I asked for a moment in the sun to steady my breath, which was true and also a sip permit. Karush's eyes narrowed. Then he nodded, generous as a man who believes generosity is a leash. I stepped 2 paces to a strip of light, tilted my face as if exhausted, and took 2 heartbeats of noon through my teeth. Rope of day scraped down. I stopped. Copper stayed out, even weight, enough to light, not enough to write my name across the fort in glass. I knelt by the pan, hands visible, no theatrics with fingers. Theatre is how songs start. I opened the mouth behind my heart a finger's width and aimed a needle of heat into the center coal the way I had blackened thistles on empty road. The coal blushed, a thin white edge, smoke, then a small, honest flame that looked almost embarrassed to be born without oil. The ring made a sound like one throat. Someone swore, someone laughed too high. The grey nose's nostrils flared as if the flame itself had insulted doctrine. Karush did not clap. He watched my mouth, my hands, the pan, my eyes. Again, he said, larger. Larger is the trap's second tooth. First tooth is the ask, second is the escalate, third is the claim. I shook my head once, runner simple. That is the trick, Captain. Road taught me a coal kiss after storms. I am not a brazier. Push me and I burn my own tongue empty, and then I am only late. Soft failure prepared. I let my hands tremble a little. Real leftover adrenaline dressed as weakness. Weakness is ordinary. Ordinary is cover. The grey nose stood, unclean. He makes a hearth of his liver. This is not skill. This is hunger wearing a man.
Karush lifted a hand without looking at him.
Hunger that lights my signal pans in rain is a tool. Doctrine that cannot climb a ridge in wind is a sermon. Sit. The grey nose sat, jaw tight. Conflict between them was a crack. Cracks are exits if you are thin enough. Karush pointed at a second pan brought forward by a grinning soldier. Again, same size. Then we talk terms. Terms already meant collar. I lit the second pan the same way. Needle, no stream, no joy on my face. Flame, stop. I pulled the hollow shut so hard, sweat sprang cold along my ribs. The store dropped. Emptiness ached. Good. Empty looks like limit. Limit is the third road's handrail. Enough, I said, and let my voice roughen. I will miss my next hop if I play hearth all afternoon. Karush's lower face smile returned. You will miss what I say you miss. But he glanced at the soldiers and saw enough ore to water a plant he wanted to grow in controlled soil. He clapped once. Back to work. The runner lights coal when I say. No songs in the yard. Songs get men stupid. The ring broke into mutter and movement. Nada caught my eye across ash drift and flicked 2 fingers low. Still alive, still not property fully. I did not nod. Nods are recorded by the wrong eyes. The grey nose intercepted me near the cistern. Confession buys cleaner endings than discovery, he said. Same school, same bait. I thanked him for the blessing he thought he gave and drank water that steamed faintly against my tongue. He saw the ghost of steam. His eyes brightened with ugly joy. I wiped my mouth and made a joke about hot yards. He did not laugh. He had seen enough to write a tablet that could travel faster than my feet. Karush called me back up before the joke cooled. Private room, no stool wobble this time. He stood close enough that I smelled charcoal soap and onion. You are mine while you eat my mash and run my locals, he said. Not temples, not vahrams, mine. I will not put you in a covered cart if you keep lighting what I need lit and keep your mouth boring to everyone else. If you run, I will tell the grey ones your true route myself. If you shine too bright in front of them, I will decide you are safer as ash lesson than as tool. Balance, Ardash. Tools that unbalance get melted. Yes, Captain. He studied me for a long breath. You hate me a little. Good. Hate keeps tools from becoming pets. Pets get soft. Soft dies when grey-silver thickens. Dismissed. I left with my empty hollow, my lit pans behind me as evidence and chain, and the clear knowledge that the demonstration trap had closed only halfway. Halfway is where third roads live. I still had a name. I still had laws. I still had a captain who wanted a weapon and thought he had invented ownership by watching coal blush. Ownership is a story. Portion is a practice. I walked into shed shade to practice breathing like a man who had only a trick, not a sky in his chest, until even my own pulse almost believed it. That night I dreamed the pans became eyes and blinked whenever I lied. I woke and checked the shed wall for new stains. None. Control held while I slept, which is a kind of graduation the road does not certificate. I pressed a wet cloth to my chest until it warmed, turned it, repeated, and forced the hollow down into banked quiet. Tomorrow would bring more schedule. Schedule is a slow demonstration trap. I intended to stay needle small inside it until a door opened that did not require a song. The next 3 days, Ash Post tried to turn a trick into a schedule. Morning, local hop. Midday, optional coal light if wind killed the ridge braziers. Evening, inventory eyes and onion mash. I ran. I lit when refused would have been louder than flame. I kept every light needle small. I failed twice on purpose when the grey nose watched too hard, hands shaking, coal only smoking. Soft failure. Karush's mouth tightened, but he preferred a tool with limits he could curse over a miracle he could not schedule. Limits are armor if you choose them before someone else measures them. Nader taught me the fort's quieter map between hops. Which soldier sold news to caravans? Which stable boy hated the grey nose for kicking a cat? Which hour the fodder gate bar stuck least? She did not ask to see heat. She asked whether I slept. Sleep is a revolutionary act in a collector's house, she said. I slept in pieces and called it victory. On the second night, a runner arrived from the west with dust on his teeth and fear in his timing. Grey pears on the high road, paying silver for freckle maps, asking after Ash Post by name. Karush took the news like a man receiving both threat and validation. Attention on his fort meant his tool mattered. Attention also meant temple weight could outvote a captain's private shelf. He called me up. If they come, you are a coal trick and a good pair of feet, nothing else. If they press, you will light one pan and cough afterward like a man spent. If you empty the sky in my yard to scare them, I will put you down myself before they can write the tablet. I will not host a god, I will host a lamp. Yes, Captain. He almost looked relieved that I did not argue for glory. Glory is expensive in Ash country. I left his office and found the grey nose at the bottom of the steps as if grown from timber. Your captain thinks he can lease unclean fire, he said. Lease becomes ownership. Ownership becomes audit. Audit becomes pyre or throne gift. Choose confession under clean light before the lease matures. I told him my lease was lentils and local hops. He smiled the polished knife smile and walked toward the wall, where the charcoal ridge drew a black line under stars. That night I stood on the west stair in dark and considered leaving. Foddergate, scrub slope, goat braids, distance. The hollow was low after evening soft failures. Night without sky waited beyond the walls like an old tutor. I could go. Karush would send my route to grey silver. Maybe he already had a tablet half written as insurance. Leaving now might be running into a comb instead of away from a collar. Stay tool, not pet. Tools get set down between tasks. Pets sleep on the bed and get their throats checked for tags. I stayed. On the third midday, a ridge brazier truly died in a hard crosswind. Signal crew sent a runner. Karush sent me. I climbed with a light store, knelt in soot and kissed coal into life under the crew's half-deaf gratitude. No audience ring, no grey nose, just wind and work. The flame took. The crew slapped my shoulder as if I were lucky weather. I let them. Lucky weather leaves, gods get temples. Descending, I saw dust knots on the western approach, 2, then 3. Not caravan spacing, comb spacing. My body catalogued costs before my mind finished naming fear. Lips cracked, store medium, exits known, soft failure rehearsed, Neda's calf, Karush's lower face smile, Rostam's copper still against my ribs like a second small law. People can help without owning you. At the gate, Melon Guard had lost his melon and found a spear held properly. Captain says yard assembly, he said. Guests. Guests with grey cloth and silver in their bags. I walked in wiping soot on my tunic like a man who had been useful in a boring way. Tool posture, not hunted posture. Hunted posture makes guests feel clever. Karush stood on his office step. Grey nose beside him, bright-eyed. 3 riders dismounted in the yard. Mixed kits, ash already staining their hems as if ash post marked all who entered. One carried a charcoal stick case, reader of freckles. Another carried rope that tried to look like ordinary tack. The third had a face like a closed ledger. "We hear your fort lights pans without oil," Ledgerface said. "We hear a lean runner with a cooked mouth. We have sketches. We have a spear tip that remembers heat. We have silver for truth and rope for theater." Karush's smile did not reach his eyes. "Ash Post has a runner with a road trick. He lights coal, he runs locals, he eats mash. If you want a demon, try the Ridge Scrub, where shepherds drink too much. If you want tax paid on time, leave my lamp where it works." The freckle reader opened his case. I smelled wax and old ash. He looked at me as if I were a wall stain that had learned to walk. The hollow rolled. I gave it nothing. Empty hands, ordinary breath. Tool not pet, tool not demon, tool not free, yet. The chapter's promise stood in the yard, dust between them. A captain who wanted a weapon, a runner who refused to become only that weapon, and a secret still held under onion stew and soot, while Empire and Temple tried to invent a name for me that came with a shelf and a lock. After the guests dismounted, I kept my breathing slow enough to bore a drummer. Fast breath is a confession of chase, even when your feet stand still. Karush knew it, Ledgerface knew it, the freckle reader wrote something anyway. I stared at a point on the ash drift where a beetle struggled and made the beetle my whole world for 10 heartbeats. Small worlds save large secrets. When Karush spoke again, I looked up like a tool hearing its inventory number, not like a man hearing a verdict. Ledgerface's spare mounts stamped and smelled the smithy smoke with rolled eyes. Horses know when yards go wrong. I kept my distance from their iron and leather. Metal is a door, even calm metal. A soldier smirked at my caution and muttered soft. I let him. Soft is a word that keeps you uninteresting if you do not flinch at it. Flinching writes a line on a freckle reader's page. Karush did not hand me over. He also did not stand in front of me like a shield. He stood like a merchant between two buyers, weighing which sale left him richest in the only currency captains truly spend, continued command. Yard assembly watched. Onion stew steam drifted from the cook shed, domestic and absurd, beside rope and charcoal cases. My stomach ordinary growled. My stomach second stayed shut. I thought of stew, lentils, Neda's warning, Vahram's paper mercy, Shirin's dates, ordinary hungers, camouflage. Ledgerface asked my name. Ardash, route, local, storm history, weather, bandits, roads have teeth, spear tip. I have seen melted things near forges, dry river needle. I have seen heat shimmer lie. Each answer true enough to pass a lazy god and false enough to starve a thorough one. The freckle reader circled me, stopped at my strap sleeve, sniffed leather. He asked me to bear the nail wrap. Karush's eyes flicked. I unwrapped slowly. Iron nubs, blunt, dark, ordinary as poverty. The reader compared to a sketch. Close, not perfect. Rostam's extra sleeve and my rewraps had bought millimeters of doubt. Millimeters are miles when tablets want certainty. Light the pan, Grey Nose said softly. Show them your thief gut. Karush cut in. He lights when wind kills ridge flame, not as yard dance for every guest with silver. My fort is not a carnival. Ledgerface smiled without teeth. Then bring wind, or bring him to the Temple Road under escort. Choose. Silence stretched. Ash drifted. A horse stamped. Somewhere a cat made a sound like a hinge. I felt the third road narrow to a thread. I spoke before Karush sold the wrong hour. If I light once, small, then I run the ridge and light the real brazier you actually need, and your guests can watch from the wall if they like soot. If I stand here performing, I am late for signal, and your charcoal quota gets a black mark beside your name, Captain. I am a runner. Use me as one. Useful, not spectacular. Tool, not pet. I put the words into posture. Karush's lower face found its smile. You heard him. Ridge, now. Guests who wish to climb may climb. Ash Post does not carry soft feet. 2 of the 3 riders spat and stayed in the yard with rope. Ledgerface and the freckle reader came. Grey Nose came. Karush sent 2 soldiers and me. 7 shadows on the ridge path. Noon still hard. My store low. I needed sip and could not sip with noses counting my breaths. I stumbled on purpose halfway up, hands on knees, and turned my face to a scrub patch as if sick. 2 heartbeats. Stop. Copper nearly kissed my sight, and I killed the 3rd heartbeat before it lived. Enough. Barely. At the ridge brazier, the wind was real, a slicing cross that made the crew swear in patterns. Cold dead. I knelt, needle, blush, flame, small. The freckle reader leaned so close I smelled his wax. Grey nose whispered unclean, like a love word. Ledgerface watched Karush more than me, measuring the captain's ownership face. Spent, I said, and let myself cough. Soft failure after success. Limit displayed. I sat on soot-black stone and drank skin water with hands that shook. The crew slapped my back. Lucky weather. I could have burned them all for the slap, and instead thanked them like a man who needed friends more than ash. Descending, Ledgerface said he is real enough to cage. Karush said he is useful enough to schedule. Cage him and the ridge dies in wind. Temple can eat its sermons when signals fail and bandits read the dark as invitation. They argued in low voices the rest of the slope. I walked ahead just far enough to be tool, not participant. Neda's 3rd road was a ridge path with stew waiting at the bottom and rope waiting in the yard. I had not been free. I had not been taken. The secret sat under onion stew steam when we returned, still mine, now half known the way a covered coal is known by smell. In the shed, Neda shoved a bowl into my hands. Eat. You look like a story that almost ended mid-sentence. I ate. Ordinary salt, ordinary mash. The hollow ignored it and sulked in emptiness. I praised the emptiness. Empty is a kind of proof. Outside, guests did not leave. They took wall space. Rope stayed visible on a saddle like a sentence fragment. Karush posted melon guard with orders that included my name and the words inside radius. Tool schedule tightened. I lay on straw and recited laws until they outran the image of Ledgerface's smile. Never near allies, never to the brim, never explain. Starve and still move. Metal is a door. Stop while you can stop. No mirrors when hot. Portion is daily second law. Shown coal is expensive. Soft failure is a blade. Useful is not owned if you keep a door in your head. The door tonight was small. Fodder gate, west stair, guests on walls, grey nose sleepless. Leaving would paint me guilty in fresh wet clay. Staying painted me property in slower ink. I chose slower ink for one more night because slower ink sometimes smudges if you breathe on it right. I slept with knife in hand and stew in gut and sky held behind the heart, like a sealed coal no guest had fully inventoried yet. Before sleep, I scrubbed my mouth with grit until the cracked red looked freshly ordinary. Painful convincing still beat true black. The grey nose had seen steam once. He would look for it forever. I drank the next water cold from the bottom of the jar and held it in my mouth until any ghost of heat died. Then I swallowed and tasted only clay and old rain. Ordinary. Blessed ordinary. I lay down with that taste and let it be the last word the day got from me. Neda snored lightly within minutes, the sleep of someone who has decided worry cannot dig a brother's lungs clean. I envied the decision. My worry still had jobs, escort patterns, guest watch changes, west stair mortar, Karush's almosts. I ran the jobs behind my eyes until they blurred into a single plan shaped like a thin man and a knight. Then I forced the plan to sleep beside me like a second knife, present, unopened. Morning brought tablets, not temple scripture, fort orders, local hops doubled, ridge on call, no outgate without paired escort, my name in clay with a mark beside it that the clerk would not explain and did not need to. Paper collar, soft, tightening. Karush summoned me while guests still slept or pretended to. You bought yourself a day with that ridge speech, he said. Buy more. I am writing you as Ash Post signal insurance. Insurance does not desert. Insurance does not confess to grey noses without my seal. In return, I keep rope off your throat and silver out of soldiers' hands. And if temple outranks your seal, I asked. Then we both learn how fast ash burns, he said, and for once the lower face smile died completely. Get out, run the lower village, take Nada. Her calf needs work, and you need a witness who is ours, not theirs. Ours. The word tried to sit on me like a second strap. I let it sit loosely. Nada and I left under escort of a bored soldier who hated sun more than escape risk. On the road beyond earshot, she said, "He is scared. Scared captains invent paper. Paper is weaker than rope and stronger than promises. Use it. Do not trust it." I asked if she would run if I ran. She looked at the plateau a long time. My brother still coughs on the ridge. I run when his chest runs, not before. Do not make me choose your door over his lungs. I would not ask, I said, and meant it. Allies are not fuel. At the lower village, we delivered water tallies and plague scrap copies. People kept distance. A child threw a pebble at me for luck or hate. I could not tell which. On the return road, our escort lagged to drink from a skin. Dust knots showed west again, thicker. Not our 3 guests. Reinforcement or coincidence? I do not believe in coincidence when silver is involved. Back at Ashpost, Ledgerface waited at the gate with a fresh tablet. Transfer request, he told Karush in the yard where soldiers could hear. Temple Garrison joint custody of unclean fire suspect. Sign and be relieved of liability. Karush read. His scalp shone with sweat that was not only noon. Liability is a captain's ghost. He looked at me. I kept tool face. He looked at Grey Nose. Grey Nose glowed with quiet triumph. He looked at his walls, his ash drifts, his signal needs, his private shelf of collected people. Not today, Karush said. Signal season, wind, bandits. I counter with essential labor hold. You may sleep on my wall. You may not leave with my lamp until Provincial Seal outranks mine. Ledgerface's closed book face cracked into something like respect for a worthy obstacle. Provincial Seal rides 3 days behind us, he said. Enjoy your 3 days. 3 days, a clock made of hoofbeats not yet arrived. Karush dismissed the yard with a bark, to me low. You will not waste my 3 days. You will make yourself too useful to transfer cleanly and too boring to inspire songs. If you have a door, build it without making me watch. If I watch, I must stop you to stay captain. That was almost mercy. Almost is a currency I had learned to spend carefully since Vahram. I spent the afternoon on ridge and village and coal kiss under wind, needle small, cough after, escort always near. The Hollow hated the schedule. I hated it more and kept it anyway. At evening, I sat with Nada repairing strap sinew. She hummed a work tune with no words. Words become evidence. Grey Nose passed the shed door and paused. 3 days is a gift you did not earn, thief gut. Use it to kneel. I told him I used days to run. He left oil smell on the air like a stain. Night, guests on wall, paper collar on my name, Provincial Seal 3 days out, secret still under stew and soot, half smelled, not fully caged. Chapter promise holding. Captain wanted a weapon. I remained tool and secret by inches. Inches are how runners survive country that wants them to become monuments. I touched Rostam's copper under my tunic and thought of unpaid debts that were not collars. Then I thought of doors that did not require Neda to choose my breath over her brother's. Foddergate, West Stair, signal crew deafness, charcoal ridge paths that fork towards scrub where freckle maps go blind. 3 days to cut a door while looking like insurance. I slept in pieces, woke to horn, and ran as if paper were only paper, knowing it was not, knowing Provincial Seals turned paper into rope, knowing Ashpost's collector smile would choose command over me when the harder tablet arrived, unless I was already gone into a story that still named me late post. I folded the idea of 3 days into run segments, morning village, midday ridge, evening nothing that looked like packing. Packing is a tell. I repaired gear that did not need repair, so my hands had honest theatre. Neda watched and nodded once. Theatre for watchers, real door for night, her nod said. I did not nod back. 2 nods are a conversation. Conversations near guests become tablets. I hummed nothing and stitched sinew like a man who planned to die of boredom in Ash Post's service. Between hops, I drank at the cistern and watched Ash film the water skin each time wind moved. The fort tried to mark everything with its name. I wiped the skin clean and thought of Neda's brother coughing on the ridge, a debt that was not mine to spend. Spending other people's lungs for your door is how tools become monsters. I would cut a door that cost my skin first. On the ridge that afternoon, the wind slapped my face with grit, and the crew handed me dead coal like a verdict. I lit, coughed, sat. A guest's distant figure on Ash Post wall watched the smoke of success with a posture that meant tablet. I did not wave. I did not spit. I asked the crew about their water and let them complain until complaint became a blanket over my silence. Blankets matter when watchers stand on walls. The second night of the 3, I drew wall watch as signal insurance, which meant Karush wanted me visible to guests and unable to meet doors in the dark without witnesses. Inner wall walk, ash grit under sandals, brazier dirty orange every 20 paces, grey nose prayed or pretended at the north corner. Ledger face slept like a knife in a sheath, eyes closed, ears open. Freckle Reader sat with his case on his knees and watched stars as if Freckles lived there too. I walked my segment with a spear I did not love. Spear points are metal doors. I kept the shaft in hand and the point away from storms that were not present. Habit. 5th law extends into calm because calm lies. Nida brought watered wine to wall men and paused at my elbow. West Stair Mortar is loose on the 3rd turn, she whispered into the cup handoff. Not tonight, tomorrow night if the deaf crew drinks. Then she was gone, ordinary kindness covering extraordinary map work. I did not look at the West Stair. Looking is a tell. A wind came up hard from the charcoal ridge, carrying grit that stung. Brazier flames leaned and spat. One near the guests died. Ledgerface's eyes opened. Grey nose turned. Karush's standing order sat in my bones. Light when wind kills flame. I knelt, needle, blush, flame, small. Cough, soft. The Freckle Reader wrote something without looking at the tablet, as if his hand had eyes. I hated his hand. I kept my face bored. Lucky weather, a soldier muttered. I wanted to be weather that left. Near middle night, the grey nose joined my segment uninvited. Clean firemen keep night watches too, he said. We watch for thief light in the gut of the world. You glow even when you do not mean to. Heat under skin, steam on water, coal without oil. Confession is a cooler road than provincial rope. I asked him if confession had saved the boy in the covered cart from the lower road stories. His silence was answer enough. Clean endings are clean for the temple, not always for the body inside the ending. He left oil smell again. I walked until my feet blistered and the blisters felt like honesty. Below in the yard, rope still hung on a saddle. Paper collar clay sat in a clerk's box. 3 days less one. Provincial seal riding somewhere under the same stars. A future mouth. I recited once, sorted near and far. Near, door tomorrow night. Soft failure if forced to light. Neda unbroken by my choice. Far, open road power without shelf. No crown, no pet bed. Noon on a leash I held. Priest of clean fire somewhere ahead in the 10-chapter spine as a named hunt. Not only a grey nose with oil. Far wants poison near work if they sit in the hands. I cooled my hands on stone until no hiss lived in imagined troughs. Then I finished the watch like insurance. At relief, I slept 2 hours and dreamed of Mortar loose on a 3rd turn and woke with the dream still useful. Dawn hop, ridge, village, escort, guests watching, Karush watching me watch exits. He pulled me aside near the cistern at noon. You are building a door, he said. Do not insult us both by denying. If you go, go in a way that lets me claim surprise. Surprise keeps my seal. If I must choose between my seal and your skin when provincial clay arrives, I will choose seal. That is not betrayal, that is captain. I thanked him for the weather report. He almost smiled with his whole face and killed it before it became affection. Affection is a pet risk. Afternoon wind stayed kind, no lights required. I banked 2 heartbeat sips behind scrub on the village road when escort wiped sweat from his eyes. Store built even, copper denied. For a door you want legs and a hollow that can threaten without emptying, and a stop that still works when panic offers the whole sky as a stupid key. Evening mash. Neda's eyes said tonight. Guests thicker on wall after a messenger whispered something to Ledgerface that made his closed book open a page of satisfaction. Provincial seal may be closer than 3. Clocks lie. Hoofbeats do not. I lay down early like a tired tool. Knife, copper, packet light enough to abandon if abandonment saved lungs. Laws in step rhythm until the fort noise thinned to wall coughs and horse shifts. On the wall earlier, I had learned the guests' sleep fakes. Ledgerface breathed too even. Freckle Reader peeked at every third brazier spit. Grey nose paced like a hinge. A moth burned in a brazier with a tiny hiss. The hollow twitched toward even that dirty spark. I counted wall stones until the twitch passed. Discipline is a pile of tiny refusals. When Neda's scratch came at the shed timber, I was already awake. Anticipation is an alarm that does not click stones. I rose, left the satchel's emptiest pouch as decoy bulk under the blanket, and took only knife, copper, cloth, and the light packet scrap I could burn without mourning. I followed her shadow along timber until the west stair mouth opened like a held breath, and then she was gone back to her calf and her brother's debt, leaving the third turn to me alone. I rose into the kind of night that does not forgive noise, and went toward loose mortar and a door cut thin enough for a man who refused to become inventory. I checked the store one last time before the stair, even, not brim, enough to threaten without painting the wall orange. Panic offered the whole sky as a key. I refused the key. Keys that glow get copied. I put my palm on timber, felt ordinary splinters, and stepped into the stair mouth with bare feet and a closed hollow, a man shaped like a door hinge about to swing only once. The night smelled of ash, horse, and oil. I took that smell as a list of enemies and kept my own heat off the list for 1 more hour, then another, until the hour named door finally arrived and found me ready enough. Ready enough would have to do. The west stair breathed cold out of stone. Ash grit made every step a potential shout. I went barefoot, sandals slung at my neck, knife free, store even, heart trying to be quieter than the fort deserved. First turn, second, third, mortar loose under left edge as Neda said. I eased weight outward, felt the block shift a finger's width, enough for a thin man to make a gap against the outer face where shadow thickened. Not a hole, a betrayal of geometry. I squeezed through scraped ribs and hung on outer stone with toes hunting cracks. Below, scrub slope and night. Above, wall walk voices. Grey noses oil somewhere north. No shout yet. I descended wrong and human, tearing forearm on stone teeth, catching a ledge with a burn of shoulder muscle, dropping the last body length into thorn that accepted me like a spiteful friend. Pain bright, pain ordinary. I bit it silent. Bare feet found dirt. Sandals on. Scrub closed. Ash post's inner orange brazier light became a halo above mud teeth. I moved along the wall base toward the charcoal ridge path because ridge forks hid freckle maps and because fodder gate would have eyes. A cat hissed and fled. I blessed it for not being a guard. Halfway to the ridge cut, a voice behind me, low, not shouting. Runner. Kairush. I stopped in thorn shadow because running from a voice that did not raise alarm might be smarter than bolting into a chase cry. He stood inside the fodder gate's outer pen as if he had known the door's shape and chosen to stand adjacent rather than atop it. No soldiers, no grey nose, only captain shape and night. If I call, he said, you are caught before the ridge. If I do not call, I am surprised at dawn. Be worth my surprise. Do not make a song on your way out. Do not light my sky where they can point. And if you survive provincial clay, remember Ash Post needed a lamp, not a legend. He stepped back inside and barred the fodder gate as if locking nothing of importance. Almost mercy again. Captains collect almosts the way I collect laws. I ran, ridge path under star-thin soup. I did not drink stars. I saved the hollow for true noon and true threats. Knife and feet and path memory. Cloud night lessons from earlier chapters rode my ankles. Starve and still move. Behind, no horns yet. Surprise holding. Ahead, forks. One toward signal crew huts, one toward scrub canyons that led north of the high road's comb patterns. I took canyons. Thorns wrote new lines on skin. Copper from Rostam bounced against ribs. I kept it. Debts that are not collars deserve carrying. At a dry wash I paused, bound my torn forearm with cloth, listened. Night insects, wind, distant horse somewhere too far to name. Ash post still dark of alarm. Good. I wanted to release a ribbon into dirt from pure joy. I did not. Joy is a leak. Leaks are found. I put joy under law and moved until my lungs burned ordinary, and the hollow stayed a banked coal instead of a festival. Dawn grayed. I sipped 2 heartbeats in a crack of rock and stopped, even, ready. The plateau's old indifference returned as cover. I aimed for a line that would skirt Brown Tooth country, and Varams fought both, a diagonal toward posts that had not yet written me as insurance. By full light, I looked back once from a saddle. Ash post was a brown tooth with a black ridge behind it. No dust knot of immediate chase. Provincial seal still a rumor clock. Karusha's surprise still a gift with teeth. I touched my chest. Partner with teeth answered. Not master, not slave, not pet, not shelf tool. Still secret enough. I put more distance on before any dawn horn could invent a chase. Distance is a language captains understand when they file surprise. The more miles, the more plausible their blindness. I owed Karush that plausibility. Paying debts without kneeling is a craft. I paid in miles and in the refusal to torch the sky over his walls as farewell fireworks. Thorn needles broke in my calf, and I left them until the first full stop, because pulling while running makes a worse limp. Limp is a trail marker. When I finally sat, I worked them out with knife tip and clean spit and cloth, eyes wet from sting, not grief. Grief is for later chapters if I earn later chapters. This chapter earned distance. In a canyon fold, I shook once, hard, shedding tool shoulders and insurance face, then rebuilt the runner. Laws first, breath, sip plan for dawn. Private thank you never to be delivered aloud to Karush or Neda. Thanks are handles. Gratitude stayed mute beside the hollow. I ran into morning with Ash Post's paper collar broken by loose mortar, and a captain's calculated blindness. Carrying the chapter's kept balance, he had wanted a weapon. I had remained at late post with a coal trick and a door, leaving before provincial clay turned almost mercy into rope. By the time the sun cleared the eastern teeth, I had put a salt flat's worth of bad tracking ground behind me. Salt ghosts' footprints and lies about direction. I crossed a pale finger of it, doubled back along stone, and left the flat at a different notch than I entered. Paranoia with posture. Behind my heart, the ember stayed banked, partner not master. Ahead, posts that did not know my insurance mark waited like blank clay. I ran toward blankness as if it were water. Salt crust broke under my sandals with tiny sounds like distant tablets snapping. I did not flinch at the image. Tablets would snap behind me or they would not. My job was the next notch of stone, the next thorn screen, the next refusal to become a silhouette worth drawing. I passed through the notch and let the salt flat keep its lies for anyone following with better horses and worse questions. Worse questions lose time. Time was the only coin I still spent freely, and I spent it on empty land that asked for nothing but footsteps and the discipline to keep heat quiet under bone. Calculated blindness is a kind of contract. Karush had signed with silence. I signed with absence. Neither of us would ever write it on clay. I used the morning to erase trail the way runners erase debt, not perfectly, just enough to make the next man work. Hard ground. Stream gravel where a thin rill still moved. Backtrack once into thorn and out at a different angle. No scorch, no monuments. Pride wanted to blacken a stone in farewell. Survival wanted bare dirt. Bare dirt won. At a shepherd camp, I traded Rostam's last meat strip for rough bread and a lie told on my behalf. A lean runner went west at dawn. I went northeast. The shepherd's eyes were milky and kind. Kindness without ledger unsettled me less than it used to. I let it. By noon heat, the hollow demanded portion. I gave 2 heartbeats on a saddle with clean sightlines and none after. Copper stayed sleeping. Discipline after escape is harder than discipline in cages, because joy lies and calls itself freedom's right. Freedom's right is still subject to overfill death. The sky does not care that you outran a fort. A column of salt mules passed south. I joined their dust long enough to smell like commerce, then peeled away before drivers asked names. Names were becoming expensive. I thought through ash post as if writing a mistake map on leather I did not carry. Yard pans, soft failures, grey nose steam catch, paper collar, provincial 3 days, loose mortar, Kurush at Foddergate, which marks would freckle readers chase, which would captains deny. The coal lights were public, the second stomach's full truth was not. Public marks make false trails if you stop lighting and start being only feet again for a while. So I would be feet, knife, boring mouth, no coal kisses even for dying braziers unless my life sat on the flame. Let signal crews curse wind without me. Let temples sniff cold pans. Near evening, I found a waypost that had not heard Ashpost's inventory songs yet. I stamped nothing because I carried no honest local scrap worth their clay. I paid copper for wall space and slept among sacks of barley with knife in hand. A clerk asked if I was the storm runner. I asked him if he was a poet. He decided I was dull and left me alone. Dull is a door that works in daylight. Night brought a single rider hard up the road from the south, not north, which meant not direct from Ashpost. Messenger pace. I watched through a crack as he shouted for fresh horse and provincial priority. The words Ashpost and unclean and runner leaked through his dust. Clock faster than 3 days, or a different provincial mouth with the same teeth. I left before his fresh horse arrived, barefoot into scrub until road bend hid me, then sandals and run. Calculated blindness behind me would not hold once provincial clay offered Karush a way to keep command by sacrificing surprise. Contracts of silence expire under harder seals. I ran with that expiry in mind and did not hate Karush for the future betrayal he had already advertised. He had told me the weather. Weather is allowed to turn. Toward middle night, I rixed a thin scrap of starlight sip that did almost nothing, and laughed once at my greed, soft, alone. The second stomach wanted storms and hard noon. I would bring both on my schedule, if schedule survived the next collars. Schedule meant distance now. Distance meant choosing posts for water, not stamps. Stamps were how paper collars begin. Before sleep, in a rock overhang, I bound my torn forearm again, cleaned thorn punctures, drank carefully, and recited the chapter promise to the dark. Captain wanted weapon. I stayed tool and secret long enough to leave. Secret still held in the only inventory that mattered. Cliff ahead honest, provincial hunt thickening, priest of clean fire doctrine riding with grey noses, open road not the same as free road. I slept in pieces, woke to pre-dawn, sipped 2 heartbeats at first white edge, stopped, ran. Behind my heart, the ember waited without sulking for once, as if it too understood that bare feet and loose mortar had been a kind of aim. Aim is not only heat on coal. Aim is a life pointed at tomorrow without writing today's name in ash for enemies to read. I used a stick to break my sandal print edges on soft patches until the tracks looked older than they were. Paranoia is planning with better posture. A hawk turned overhead and did not care. I envied it less than I used to. Hawks do not carry secrets that start wars of paperwork. When the stick snapped, I dropped both halves into a rill and watched them tumble like tiny abandoned weapons. Then I ran until planning and paranoia became simply pace. At the overhang, I stacked 3 fist stones at the entrance where a foot would click them, alarm cheap and honest. Then I slept with my back to rock and my face to the click path. Once in the night, the stones ticked from wind, not feet. I woke, waited, slept again. Waking correctly is a skill. I practiced it like aim. At a fork, I chose the worse road because hunters prefer comfort when they think they are close. Worse road meant stones and a grade that punished knees. My knees accepted the tax. By a leaning juniper, I paused to sip 2 heartbeats and felt the stop land cleaner than it had in Ashpost's yard. Context matters. Free air makes law easier and appetite louder. I held law louder still and ran until juniper was a dark pin behind me. Calculated blindness is a contract written in absence. I honored it with miles and with no farewell heat over his walls. When a hawk turned above the worse road I had chosen, I did not take it as omen. I took it as a creature with better eyes and fewer tablets. Hunters prefer comfort when they think they are close. I gave them discomfort and grades that punished knees. My knees paid. My name stayed off the morning clay a little longer. At the overhang, I stacked 3 fist stones at the entrance where a foot would click them. Alarm cheap and honest. Wind ticked them once. I woke, waited, slept. Waking correctly is a skill like aim. I practiced it between thin dreams of provincial banners and Nada's cup click. By the next noon, I had become a charcoal hauler in other people's eyes, dull enough that a clerk called me poet as insult and left. Dull is a daylight door. I used it, then left before loneliness invented a job with my mouth on a shelf. Provincial dust has a different taste than local dust, finer, driven by more horses, mixed with oil from men who sleep in better tents and believe maps are the land. I saw it first as a smudge south of the high road spine, then as glitter of metal, then as a column too neat for merchants. Not the 3 guests from Ashpost, a proper comb, riders, a cart with a covered frame, spare mounts, a banner so small it pretended modesty. Modesty is a style of power. I went to belly in scrub and became geology. The column passed a bowshot below my ridge with sound that made insects stop. Voices carried scraps, Ashpost, lamp man, captain's surprise, temple custody. The covered cart's wheels clicked like teeth. I thought of the boy who lit wet wood and did not think long. Thinking long in scrub while columns pass is how you move and get seen. After they went, I lay until birds returned. Then I moved opposite their line, north by east, toward broken country where neat columns hate to fray. The hollow wanted a wide release into the cart's cover, a hero stroke that would become a song and 1,000 harder hunters. First Law's cousins screamed, never near unknowns who might be chained inside, never spectacle when bare feet work. I let the column keep its wheels. Intelligence is a kind of heat that does not glow. By afternoon, I reached a cistern ruin with half a roof, water brackish. I drank anyway, ordinary stomach work. A woman washing a child at the far side watched me and pulled the child closer. My face had become a thing mothers feared without knowing the correct story. I left a copper on the stone and went before gratitude or screams could form. Evening painted the plateau copper and rose the way it had at the end of the hungry clear sky days. Continuity of light. Continuity of hunt. I camped without fire under an overhang that could have been the twin of others. Knife-free, ember-banked, laws in step rhythm. Never near allies, never to the brim, never explain. Starve and still move. Metal is a door. Stop while you can stop. Shown coal is expensive. Soft failure is a blade. Useful is not owned. Calculated blindness expires. Hoofbeats at midnight, fewer. Scouts peeling from the provincial body. They passed below, talking of tracks that vanished into thorn, and a captain at Ashpost who swore the lamp had been a coal trick, and a deserter, nothing more. Karush still playing his weather. Good. I owed him the worth of his surprise by not lighting the sky tonight. I did not smile. Smiles are for bills paid. My bill was current only. Dawn sip. 2 heartbeats. Stop. run. My forearms scabbed, stiff, calves hard, lips cracked, appetite for sky half a thought from mutiny. I denied mutiny and bought bread at a village that smelled of garlic and goat, lying that I was a charcoal hauler between ridges. Charcoal haulers are believed near ash country. Belief is cover. A drunk in the square sang a comic verse about a devil who delivered mail and lit pans for captains until the pans became collars. Men laughed, I laughed. Inside, want flinched and then sharpened. Let them sing, songs are smoke. I was building lungs and doors. South, Provincial Dust rose again as the column adjusted course on some freckle reader's guess. I adjusted more. The land became a board. I moved as the piece that refuses to be captured by looking like it is already off the board. Just a rock, just a hauler, just late post dust. Near a fork shrine with iron nail wards, I kicked dirt over glitter and kept moving. Fifth law, always. By high sun, I crested a rise and saw, far northeast, a white smudge that might become a fire temple's walls in a later chapter's mouth. Priest of clean fire, doctrine with a house. Not today if I could choose. Today ended on open scrub with ash post behind, provincial dust beside, secret still under my ribs. Tool schedule broken, pet bed refused. I adjusted empty satchel straps, sinew honest, nail wrap hidden, and started the next stretch as if ordinary life still owned me. It did not, but it could watch me run while captains filed surprise reports and temples oiled their beards, and the sky remained pantry and snare in equal measure. Later, I found a scrap of blue cloth snagged on thorn where the column had brushed the bank. Garrison die. I buried it under a stone. Evidence is an enemy even when it is not yours. The act steadied me. Small, clean acts are how you keep from becoming only flight. Flight without craft is how covered carts fill. I checked my store, found it medium low, and did not top up under emotional noon. Emotion is a bad sip coach. I waited for a calmer mile and took 2 heartbeats there like a professional. I marked the column's direction in memory against ridge teeth and sun angle, a hunter's reverse of freckle reading. If they curved north, I would go greener east. If they split, I would choose the seam. Splitting is expensive for neat men. Neat men hate expense that does not look like order. I intended to be expensive in ways that did not shine. I thought of the covered cart's click and made a private vow without ceremony. If I ever emptied a cart, I would empty it for lungs inside, not for my legend outside. Legend is how you wake up owned by people who never met you. Lungs are specific. Specific is the scale where morality still works. The hollow did not care. I did. That caring is the human strap that keeps a second stomach from becoming the only mouth in the body. Provincial dust tastes of maps that believe they are land. I lay in scrub until birds returned and moved opposite neat columns, choosing seams neat men hate. The covered cart clicked like teeth. I vowed without ceremony that any cart I ever emptied would be for lungs inside, not legend outside. Legend is how strangers own you. Lungs are specific. Specific is where morality still fits in a hand. I buried a snag of blue cloth under stone. Evidence is an enemy even when it is not yours. Small, clean acts keep flight from becoming only panic. When I sipped on a calm mile. 2 heartbeats, stop, professional, no emotional noon. Emotion is a bad coach for appetite. The column adjusted. I adjusted more. Board and peace. Peace refusing capture by looking already off the board. I kept the secret, not perfectly. Perfection is a temple word. I kept it in the way a runner keeps water in a cracked skin. Losses measured, remaining enough, hands ready to patch. Ash post had seen coal blush without oil. Grey noses had smelled steam. Freckle readers had sketches. Provincial columns had covered carts. None of them had stood inside my ribs and watched lightning become a mouth. None had counted 2 heartbeats with me and felt the stop as a chosen muscle. The difference between cold trick and second stomach was still a country wide enough to hide in if I did not set it on fire for pride. I kept the laws, frayed and tested. Yard demonstration had strained never explain into soft failure theater. Paper collar had strained starve and still move into stay and still move. Escape had strained never release near allies into never release near anyone with a tablet. Laws that cannot flex break. Laws that flex too far become excuses. I held the middle like a strap repaired thrice. I kept names that were not inventory. Shirin, Rostam, Neda, Vahram's almost. Kurush's calculated blindness. People are not fuel. The Hollow did not understand that sentence. I did. That difference is also a country. I kept want sorted, near wants, water, distance, bland face, forearm healing. Avoid white temple smudge until craft outgrew panic. Far wants, noon on a leash, day dim later. No crown of ash, open road that flinches for the right reasons. Far wants slept under cloth at night only. I kept Rostam's copper, lighter now after bread and lies, still a weight that meant help without collar. When the last coin went, I would still owe the idea of it. At a dry village, I worked half a day hauling water jars for a widow who paid in flat bread and silence. Her silence was quality. I matched it. In the afternoon, a pair of mixed-kit riders asked her about lean men. She pointed west without looking at the shed where I sat in shade. After they left, she said, "You can haul tomorrow if you are still only a hauler." I thanked her and left at dusk because tomorrow's hauler might grow a story in someone else's mouth. Night run under partial cloud, store low, knife free. I passed a gully where men could have taken me. I moved like furniture. Furniture survives. Something large shifted and did not follow. I did not light the night to see. Light is confession. When cloud tore, I sipped a careful ribbon of late moon grey dawn starting and stopped before it became greed. The Hollow accepted without joy. Good. Joyless intake is professional. I catalogued body costs as I jogged the grey. Lips, arm, sleep, blisters, a cough from ash country that was only ash, not sickness, I hoped. Hope is not a law, but sometimes it is a bandage. What I did not keep, Ash Post's schedule, Karusha's insurance mark, the pet soft idea that a captain's need was safety. Need is a handle from both ends. He held one end, Provincial Clay held the other. My neck was not rope. At sunrise I stood on a rise and watched two dust lines, Provincial South adjusting again, Local West perhaps Ash Post riders performing chase for tablets. Between them a pale empty lane of scrub and stone. I took the lane, still Ardash, still unpaid in full by the world, still owing the world nothing but the next refusal to burn the table for a single meal. I whispered the kept list to the wind, because wind forgets faster than clay. Secret, laws, names, sorted want, copper idea, stop muscle, feet. Then I shut my mouth and let feet be the only inventory that moved. I also kept a hard private rule born in Ash Post's yard. Never light for an audience that includes rope. Rope turns flame into verdict. If a brazier dies in wind before rope eyes, let it stay dead. Signals can fail. Men can fail less finely than men who perform under verdict light. I repeated the rule until it joined the laws without needing a number. Numbered or not, it had teeth. I ran with those teeth facing outward and my mouth boring enough to disappoint every song. In a crack of shade, I repaired the strap sleeve with sinew until nail wrap lay invisible again. Sketches chase shapes. Shapes can be altered. I altered mine and felt no glamour in it, only sense. Glamour is how yard rings start. Sense is how empty roads stay empty of your corpse. I kept fear too, honestly. Fear of overfill, fear of rope, fear of Neda forced to choose, fear of becoming Korush with better lighting. Fear is information if you do not let it drive. I let it sit in the cart of my mind as cargo strapped down, not as horse. The horse remained feet, laws, stop. Fear can rattle. It does not get the reins unless I am already dead and pretending otherwise. I kept fear strapped down as cargo, not harnessed as horse. Fear of overfill, rope, Neda forced to choose, becoming Kurush with better lighting. Information, not driver. I kept a hard rule born in the yard. Never light for an audience that includes rope. Rope turns flame into verdict. Signals can fail. Men performing under verdict fail more finally. I repaired the strap sleeve until nail wrap vanished from casual sight. Sketches chase shapes. Shapes can be altered without glamour. Glamour starts yard rings. Sense keeps corpses off empty roads. What I kept made a private seal. Secret, laws, names, sorted want, copper idea, stop muscle, feet. I whispered it to wind because wind forgets faster than clay, then shut my mouth and let feet inventory the miles. I kept the taste of onion stew as a joke private enough to steady breathing when dust lines rose. Ordinary steam, ordinary mash, camouflage of mammal life under sky theft. I kept Karush's sentence too. Lamp, not legend. I did not keep it as obedience. I kept it as a whetstone. Legend is a shelf label. Lamp is a job you can quit by leaving. I had left. The whetstone stayed in the mind where laws live, sharpening the next refusal. The white smudge northeast did not fade when I blinked. Fire temple, clean walls, oil, doctrine, the place grey noses dream of when they sleep on dirty forts. Chapter 4's mouth waited there in the 10-chapter spine, priest of clean fire. I did not have to walk into its gate to feel its gravity. I angled across country to keep it on my right like a thorn I refused to grasp, closing distance without approaching, learning wind that carried sweet oil and ash of a different purity. Clean fire smells like certainty. Certainty is a weapon. A temple road crossed my lane, pale and well-kept, milestones upright like polite soldiers. I waited in scrub while a procession passed, junior priests, a cart of sealed oils, 2 armed wardens, a senior with a beard like a black fan, not my grey nose, same school. He turned his head as if he had heard heat. I became stone. After they passed, I waited until insects returned. Doctrine versus gut fire was coming, not yet if feet stayed wise. I needed stamps eventually, seals of food and alibi. Without any packet, I was only a lean man with a cooked mouth in a season when lean, cooked mouths were currency. I aimed for a minor fort south of the Temple Road's influence, a place too small for provincial banners and too broad for freckle scripture. On the way, I practiced aim on stones in a canyon where no one collected tools, needle, black mark, scuff, stop. Skill must outrun reputation. Reputation was already faster than me. Skill had to become something I could use without coal pans and audiences. Once I pushed too hard and a stone cracked. Fragments stung my shin. I sat and laughed because pain tutors without flattery. The hollow offered more. I gave it 100 count of nothing. Training appetite remains the work under the work. Evening found me at the minor fort's outer shrine. I entered at dusk when guards want fewer questions. Name, Ardash, business, looking for local hops paid in mash. They laughed and put me on latrine dig the next morning for bread. I dug, ordinary filth, ordinary pay. No one pinched my jaw. I loved them for their low standards. A drunk soldier talked about Ash Post's lampman escaping over a wall like smoke. Captain furious, temple pleased, provincial column mad enough to find someone. Stories already wrong in useful ways. Smoke over wall was not loose mortar and calculated blindness. Wrong stories are blankets if you do not correct them. Third law, never explain, never correct. I slept in their shed among men who snored without inventory sticks and woke to dig again. After bread, I left before anyone decided I should stay. Small forts get lonely, and loneliness invents jobs. Northeast, the white walls caught late sun and flared. I turned my back and went west of north, a line that kept temple gravity as a side pull, not a destination. Priest of clean fire could come find gut fire on the road if he needed a thesis. I would not deliver my ribs as a free sample. Night, overhang, no fire, ember banked. I touched the scab on my forearm and the copper coin count remaining, and the place in my head where Ash Post's yard still glowed with 2 small pan flames. Those flames were chains I had slipped and advertisements I could not unmake. Live with advertisements, outrun readers, hoofbeats far south. I did not glow, stone among stones. After silence, I allowed no smile, current bill only. Dawn sip, 2 heartbeats, stop. The hungry, clear sky stood open again, white nail ready. I drank portion, left feast, ran, toward what came next. Doctrine with a name, hunters with provincial clay, a second stomach that still obeyed stop more often than not, and a high road that had learned my silhouette and would have to learn my absence as carefully as it had learned my heat. At the minor fort latrines, I listened more than I dug. Gossip is a map with lies for contour lines. You still read it. Ash post lamp man, wall smoke, temple pleased, provincial fines. Kurush furious in public, maybe not in private. Public fury is often cover for private contracts of silence. I filed that under weather and hauled another basket of filth like a man with no future except bread. Bread arrived. I left before anyone offered a second day that could become a shelf. I washed my face at their horse trough and apologized softly when the water warmed a breath against my palms. The horse stamped and forgave nothing. Animals remained the better witnesses. I took the bread, thanked the cook with dull eyes, and left by the gate that faced away from white walls flaring in the late light like a clean tooth in a dirty jaw. Between the minor fort and the next scrub line, I passed a shrine niche with a clean flame under glass, temple style, tended by an old woman who charged a copper for a blessing she did not explain. I paid and did not take the blessing. Paying without taking confused her. Confusion is better than debate. Debate is explanation's cousin. I left her with my copper and my back and the white walls still flaring far right like a patient tooth. White walls flared and went pale. I kept them on my right like a thorn refused. Processions passed with oil and fan beards. I became stone until insects returned. At a minor fort, I dug latrines for bread and listened to useful wrong stories. Lamp man over wall like smoke. I did not correct them. Wrong stories are blankets. I washed at a trough and apologized when water warmed against my palms. The horse forgave nothing. Animals remain better witnesses than clerks. Between fort and scrub, a shrine flame under glass asked a copper for a blessing. I paid and took nothing. Paying without taking confuses doctrine. Confusion beats debate. Debate is explanation's cousin. Third law held. I left white walls behind as gravity, not destination, and practiced canyon aim until skill threatened to outrun reputation again. Before full dark, I counted copper coins and water mouthfuls and hours until I would need stamps again. Accounting keeps fantasy from starving the body. The white walls went dull silver under evening, gravity without immediate pull. I slept with knife in hand and woke once to distant bells that might have been temple or mule. I did not rise to learn which. Curiosity toward clean fire is how doctrine writes your ribs into a lesson. I rolled over and practiced being uninteresting until dawn made running honest again. At first light on the 4th day after loose mortar, I ran a ridge spine where wind cleaned ash from my clothes and left only sweat salt and thorn musk. I smelled like road again, not ash post inventory. Progress. Behind my heart, the ember sat even, fed on measured noon from the day before, ready and not ruling. Partner with teeth. I can work with that. I passed a waystone carved with a fire temple mark, a clean notch that meant protected road funds, and watched speech. I did not spit on it. I did not bow. I went around through scrub like a man who preferred goat paths to funded certainty. The hollow rolled at the notch as if tasting old argument. Future chapter, future hunt, not this mile. A runner came the other way, not Shirin, a boy too young for his strap scars. He eyed my mouth and said nothing. Smart boy. I told him water at the cistern ruin was brackish but possible. He nodded. Debt of information without names. Good. Midday I stopped on a saddle and performed private craft for no one. Sip. Heavy safe, needle into stone, black mark, no bloom, stop, scuff. The sequence sat in muscle deeper than Ash Post's schedule had reached. They had used a lamp, they had not owned the hand. Clouds built west, not stormful yet, a bruise. Lightning's cousins muttered far off. The hollow leaned hard, I leaned back. Storms are gifts and traps. Bait storms wait in the spine of later days. Today I did not volunteer as bait. I ran down into a valley where cloud shadow cooled the road, and the second stomach sulked like a barred dog. Let it sulk, sulking is not command. I ate flatbread from the widow's payment, now stale, and drank skin water warmed by my own heat, ordinary, necessary, camouflage of the mammal body under the sky-eating thing. What had Chapter 3 promised? Fort Captain wants a weapon, Ardash stays tool and secret, paid. Karush had wanted. I had lit pans under law, and left under calculated blindness, still not fully opened on any temple altar. Cliff honest, provincial dust hunted, clean fire doctrine flared white on the horizon, paper collars and covered carts waited along funded roads. The secret's millimeters of doubt would thin if I lit carelessly again. I did not feel safe. Safe is a pet word. I felt current. Current is a runner word. Evening copper light. I camped where I could see dust lines if they rose. Knife, laws, sorted want, names kept, secret kept. Stop muscle sore from use and stronger for it. Near midnight, no hooves, only wind. I almost distrusted the quiet. Quiet is sometimes a mouth closed around a better trap. I slept anyway because bodies collect debts too. Dawn again, sip again, run again, the plateau's indifference held. I put my name in footsteps instead of scorch. Still Ardash, still a late post when weather demanded and a missing lamp when captains filed surprise. Still unpaid in full, still refusing the crown of ash and the pet bed and the clean confession that makes temples sleep well. I adjusted the strap, empty of official seals for now, full of the only cargo that mattered, and took the high ground north as temple white flared once in far sun and went pale again. If priests came with doctrine, I would meet them with feet, knife, soft failure, and portioned noon, not with a yard dance for their tablets. If captains came with paper, I would find loose mortar in their certainty. If the sky came jealous, we would argue later, on my count of heartbeats, with room left under the brim. I ran. Behind me, ash post cooled into a story already wrong in useful ways. Ahead, the road narrowed toward men who thought fire could be licensed and hungers could be inventoried. Between those poles, my second stomach ticked time with my feet. Not master, not slave, not pet, not public shelf. A secret weapon learning again how to look like a man late for nothing but his own life. Promise paid. Cliff open, name still mine, heat ticking, high road waiting. I took it as if ordinary life still owned me, knowing it did not, knowing that lie remains the best sandals a storm-eater can wear until the day he chooses otherwise and teaches the sky his name on purpose, without a captain's pan or a priest's oil to translate it into collar. I ended the run at a saddle where I could see far without being a silhouette against skyline for long. Habit from hunt days. Hunt days were not over. They had only changed costume from grey pears to provincial columns and white walls. I sat on my heels, breathed, touched the ember awake enough to know it answered, then shut it to banked. Still Ardash, still stop, still secret, still moving. The high road took my footsteps without comment, and for a runner that silence is the only blessing worth trusting when temples oil their certainty and captains invent insurance out of living men. One last time I checked my body like a quartermaster of one. Feet, arm, breath, store, laws, names, secret, want near, want far asleep, provincial dust direction, temple smudge angle. Then I stood, rolled my shoulders down from tool posture into runner posture, and went, a late post with no packet and a full private cargo, heat-ticking time with feet on stone that did not care and therefore could be trusted not to gossip. If this chapter had a seal I could stamp on dirt, it would read, Weapon wanted, secret kept, tool schedule broken by choice. The cliff stamp would read, Clean fire coming, provincial dust hunting, millimeters of doubt thinning. I pressed my palm to warm stone and lifted it, no scorch left behind. Palm print without brand, man without inventory number. For now, for this mile. enough to keep running under a sky that still offered the whole feast and still met a mouth that had learned to take a portion and leave.
Still Ardash meant still stop, still secret, still sorted want, still refusing pet bed and clean confession. I ran a ridge spine until I smelled of road, not inventory. A temple notch on a waystone turned my hollow like old argument. I went goat path around funded certainty. A young runner took water advice without trading names. Debt of information without collar. Private craft on a saddle. Sip, heavy safe, needle, scorch, scuff, stop. Cloud bruise west. Hollow leaned. I leaned back. No bait storm volunteering. Flatbread stale. Water warm. Body mammal under sky eater. Promise paid, captain wanted weapon, secret kept, tool schedule broken by choice. Cliff open, clean fire, provincial dust, thinning millimeters of doubt. Palm on stone left no brand, man without number for this mile, enough. Heat ticking, high road waiting, sandals of ordinary lie worn until the day I teach the sky my name without captain pan or priest oil translating it into collar.